I'm Isabella.
Alright, I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Austin, and we read Heavy, an American Memoir by Keith Lemon.
And I read Medical Bondage by Deirdre Cooper Owens.
Yeah, so Heavy was about Keith Lemon. It's an autobiography about his time through when he was a child up to close to where he is now. It's named Heavy because one of the main points of the book is him battling with his weight in a way of trying to understand who he is and how it relates to him. But what's the most powerful part to me is the foreword when he talks of why he wants to write this book, and the quote of "I wanted to write a lie," and to his mother, "You wanted to read that lie, and then he wrote this instead." So it's a lot more truthful, he's saying, than his mother would have wanted.
Mm-hmm. Well, the book Medical Bondage is basically about the race and gender and the origins of American gynecology, and it starts off by saying that gynecology has origins back to the 1800s, especially with the doctor. His name is James Marion Sims. He opened up a hospital for a certain procedure that he would perform on enslaved black women, and that procedure, if I can find it real quick, it's called the vaginal fistulae. And so here he basically is a doctor who performs his procedures on enslaved black women, and these black women would go through certain procedures with painful procedures without any anesthesia and stuff like that, so they didn't have anything to help them towards the pain, and they didn't really have a choice. They had to go through these procedures because of their social status, which is they're black women and they're also slaves, so it happened during the slave trade and all that, and they were usually bought, so when they were bought by a slave owner, these owners would send them to doctors like Dr. Sims, so they can check them up and be if they're healthy enough for them to work as slaves, and if not, then why bother to have them as slaves and stuff like that. But the enslaved black women had a big role in having gynecology advance, because they're the ones that went through all these procedures to benefit the white women, because while they went through these procedures without any anesthesia or with the doctors experimenting on them, after the doctors experimented on them and got better at these procedures, then they would perform them on white women, so they would know what to do and have a better understanding of what it is to go through these areas of the body and these procedures.
So they do the experimental stuff on the black women.
Yeah, on black women first, and then use those procedures on the white women later on.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, so you said the social status of the black women affected why they were the ones being experimented on instead of the white women.
Yeah, because also there was this idea that black women could sustain more pain than white women. So apparently it was scientifically proven, but it really isn't, because I don't know, it was just an idea saying that white doctors thought that black women were able to sustain more pain than white women just based on their skin color and the regions of where they're from.
So why do you think that our book Heavy we had to read it for this course?
I think it's the way society determines health. It matters where you grew up and where you're from. Keith Lemon, he's from Jackson, Mississippi, so in the town he grew up in, being fat wasn't exactly a bad thing. Towards the end of the book, where he started being obsessed with losing weight, that's what people saw was as being unhealthy. So it's compared to our society, it's there's different ideas and views of what health is, and being where you're from and where you grew up, it's like it matters of what the meaning of health is.
Yeah, because his grandmother in there always said when he'd be like, I need to lose weight, his grandma was like, you don't need to lose weight, like this is better than having less weight.
Yeah.
But then when he would go and talk to people who weren't his grandmother, he'd feel like he needed to, like his gym teacher in high school and then his classmates made him feel like that was what health needed. So the different like cultures, it changes.
Yeah.
For like, okay, so further like an explanation more in depth of the book of medical bondage was other than having Black women being experimented on, they were expected to like fulfill their jobs as a slave as well as the role as patients for doctors of gynecology. And so I feel like this book is very, it emphasizes or like it shifts the focus on how gynecology is advanced, but it also shifts the focus to who had the biggest role in like making gynecology be advanced. Like instead of being like, oh yeah, all these procedures were founded and like all these doctors were able to perform successful procedures, but like how were they able to do that? Like where were they able to experiment? Who took a role in that? And like so enslaved Black women instead of like aren't given much recognition of their big role in this. So I think this book was just a bunch of like, yes, gynecology has advanced and it has like become a bigger area of medicine, but like we still have to think of where did it start off first, and you know,
it's part of the historical trauma of
Yeah.
the culture now that we've gotten all this medical information out of it, but
Right.
at what cost?
Right, exactly. So like, where did we start off first to get to this place, or like get to modern medicine now? So yeah.
So I can't know this, but I'd imagine that like now, like we don't think about gynecology as being this part. Like that's why just reading this book is such a, I'd imagine, like mind opener.
It really was for me when I started reading it. I was like, I wouldn't have thought that that's where it started. I wouldn't have thought of the origins of where gynecology started off. So like reading this book actually like opened up my eyes. Like there's so many, like especially enslaved Black women, and like any Black individual has gone through so much, especially women that had to take up that much pain and had to go through so much trauma that they were owned like their whole life, even after they died from certain procedures, because of if it was a successful, or like if like for one example, there was a story in the book that talked about a woman, Mary, who had problems with like her uterus, and so one of the doctors performed a procedure on her, but you know, Black women are also, one of the roles of a slave is to give birth to sons and children, and after her uterus was like damaged, and so the doctor had to take out her uterus, and after that she couldn't perform the role as birthing children, and so she died a couple months after that, and the doctor kept her uterus, and then he's like lended it to a different doctor to display it at a museum. So after she died, she was still owned, you know, so like they really didn't have any choice or any rights to what was made of their bodies. So
comparing that, which is a different time to this book, I'd say in I think the first or second chapter, like how these African American women weren't in control of like themselves. He sees this woman on the street, and this guy gets out of the car who he assumes in the book is her boyfriend or something, and he just like hits her, and him and his mom start running at them saying like get away from him, but then he gets in the car, and then that literally willingly gets in the car even after he hit her. It's because it's just what happens there. Like she's not in control of her own body.
Wow.
It's a difficult book to read, but
Mhm.
in a way, it, like, opened my eyes to a lot of things about the culture that I would never know based on my background.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, I think, going forward into a professional life, like having to like be able to help people like this, to know like what kind of the social determinants leading to that in like places like where Arthur grew up and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think also like another part of like the social determinants in the heavy book was like also sort of following that, like, so like Keith's mother, like she started teaching him how to like stay away from trouble because of the community and like the society they grew up in. So like the way like she taught him how to use proper language and grammar was in a way of like keeping him, how to like keep him out of trouble, and instead of like being the stereotype of like black fat boys, like she taught him how to like behave, and so that he would have like a better chance of surviving and like overcoming sort of the like the most like what people think of black people back then.
Yeah, because he ends up becoming an English literature
Yeah.
professor based on that. But you can see as he's going through how he kind of fights back against his mother and purposely uses slang terms that his friends and people around him in the community use as a way of fighting back. Also, seems a way of trying to connect with the culture that his mom's trying to pull him away from. And then when like in the foreword, when he says like this isn't the book that you want me to write, she would want him to write a book more about the non-trouble side, how like the African American communities are like progressing, and like the good, only the good parts of it, where he talks about both the good and the bad, which is a very whole view of what his childhood.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts you guys think?
No, other than it was a hard book to read, but it's very important to be able to like have knowledge of certain areas of medicine that we wouldn't have known if we like weren't pushed to read something like this.
Yeah.
But
All right.
all right.
Thanks for making this video, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.